now here is Pastor Arnold Murray.
Good day to you. God bless you. Say welcome to the Shepherd's Chapel. Welcome to this family Bible study hour. We're ready to get back into our Father's Word. I'm going to start a new book today, mainly because it's going to be called Deuteronomy, of course. And Deuteronomy is the Greek for the second law, but there's no such thing as a second law. I would rather go by the Hebrew, which is Ila Hararim, I should say. These are the words. And actually it's a repetition of the law put forth by Moses in a way that a layperson can understand. Not put forth by a priest in a very lawyerly way whereby, you need an interpreter almost to break it down. No, Moses just lays it out in layperson's language where anyone can understand it. Why am I doing this? Well, because of a sermon that came up, a lesson from our Father that was taught at Passover called The Sevens of Yah. We have many people that are all shook up and worried about the year 2000. They worry about Y2K and many other things and overlook the forest for the trees, because the main benchmark is we start the seventh day of our fathers in this particular Adamic creation, man's creation, flesh creation, which is to say we have had 6,000 years, 4,000 before Christ, 2,000 after. That completes 6, and naturally the new begins 7, which is sabbatical. Sabbatical is always the time God communicates with His children. As a matter of fact, the number 7 being made up of 3 and 4 by most scholars, 3 being the divinity, which is to say the Godhead, and 4 being the number of man, it is this number through which God communicates with man. So naturally, it falls that He communicates on the 7th day. So beginning the year 2000 by the calendar God allows us to go by, we begin the sabbatical day of the Lord. And be not ignorant of this one thing, as as Peter would say in 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 7 and 8, one day with the Lord is 1,000 years to man. Well, we're starting the 7,000th year. That's 7 days with our Father, and it happens to be a Sabbath, the time He's going to communicate. It is a benchmark, and I feel led to bring forth the law again, that it is read before that day, so that it is fresh in everyone's mind, where we find ourselves without excuse for one thing, but at the same time whereby it is fresh in our mind what God would have us do. Because yes, it's the Old Testament, and yes, it is the law. It is probably through this teaching we will learn the difference between the law, statutes, and ordinances. And if you don't know the difference, it's difficult for you to understand what the law is, because there is a great difference. And I have a set of 2 tapes titled The Law, and they will help you with that if you need to get up to speed to start Deuteronomy. However, I want to say Deuteronomy is very plain. Moses brings it forth in lay terms. This book was probably written about a month to 6 weeks before Moses died. He will be about 120 years old, which he died in his 120th year. That's 3 sets of 40, 40 being probation. So with that having been said, and the reason for the teaching of it at this time, may it find a seedbed in your mind whereby it is very rewarding to you. The book of Deuteronomy, that's the Greek title, second law. No such thing as second law. I would rather say the repetition of the law in lay terms in the Hebrew tongue. These be the words, which are the first words in verse 1, which is to say, Ele had abaram, in the Hebrew tongue being the title. These are the words. I like that title. These are the words you should know. These are the words you should pay attention to. Book of Deuteronomy, chapter 1, verse 1. These be the words which Moses spake unto all Israel on this side Jordan, in the wilderness, in the plain, over against the Red Sea. I want you to note that the word sea is in italics. It is not in the manuscripts. The word zer, which would, and will continue, between Paran and Tophel and Laban and Hazeroth and Dizahab, which is to simply say, it began at Paran. It's the 37 years of wandering in the wilderness, basically. After 37 years of wandering, if you were to take a picture in your mind of this geographical location, you would be near the Dead Sea and on that side, the side in which Moses will actually die, be taken by God to the mount, and only God would bury him. We'll find that in the last chapter. Verse 2. There are 11 days' journey from Horeb by the way of Mount Seir unto Kadesh Barnea. Now, what does this mean? Kadesh means holy, and that's what it would have been. But Barnea, being the desert of wandering, tagged on because they would wander there for 40 years. Why? They didn't obey God. An entire generation. Now, what are these people doing? They are transitioning from the wilderness into the promised land. It is a type of we under the influence of Satan moving into the promised land, God's promises of the millennium. A type for that. That's why it's so important. Verse 3. And it came to pass in the 40th year, that being probation, in the 11th month, on the first day of the month, that Moses spake unto the children of Israel, according unto all that the Lord had given him in commandment unto them. And this kind of would take place in the last month of Moses' life. I think probably that's one of the reasons we find a tenderness in him that maybe we don't find in other places. A summary, kind of the elderly father speaking to the children. But you note that tenderness in the manuscripts. Verse 4. After he had slain Sihon, the king of the Amorites, which dwelt in Heshbon, and Og, the king of Bashan, which dwelt at Ashtaroth in Edria. Okay? Now, there's one thing you want to remember. Moses did it, but God gave the victory. That must be foremost in your mind. We really don't conquer anything without God's help, because the people that we are against at this time are spiritual beings in high places. And Christ gave us the power over all of our enemies, even being the supernatural. Thus, we have the victory over them, but only because our shepherd carries a big stick. It's called a rod of iron. So don't give Moses credit for this. Give God credit. Verse 5. On this side Jordan, in the land of Moab, began Moses to declare this law, saying, this teaching, this summary. 6. The Lord our God spake unto us in Horeb. Horeb simply means desert or Sinai, saying, ye have dwelt among long enough in this mount. It's time to go. Verse 7. Turn ye and take your journey and go to the mount of the Amorites and unto all the places nigh thereunto, in the plain, in the hills, and in the vale, and in the south, and by the seaside, to the land of the Canaanites, and unto Lebanon, unto the great river, the river Euphrates. Now, Euphrates has always been the border between Babylon and our people. And what is Babylon? It's confusion. Have you crossed the border yet? Or are you still in confusion? This is important, beloved. We're living in a generation of the fig tree. And it is at this time that you must love your Father and appreciate what He has done for us down through the ages as we approach a sabbatical day of the Lord. And please do not understand what I'm saying to mean we're going into the millennium age. No, I'm not saying that. That will not happen until the seventh trump. Do not confuse the year 2000 with the millennium age written of in the book of Revelation. But nevertheless, it is a Sabbath, therefore making it a type. And you're going to see our Father begin to expedite the labor pains at that benchmark. I'm sure. Now, what does that mean, to expedite? It means you're going to see visual happenings that will fulfill Scripture at a little faster pace, and it's quite fast enough now, it would seem, at times. Verse 8, that is to say, as far as man's mind may keep up with. Verse 8, behold, I have set the land before you. Go in and possess the land which the Lord sware unto your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give unto them and to their seed after them. It's yours. It was promised. When God promises something, He keeps His word as long as you keep yours. Verse 9. And I spake unto you at that time, saying, I am not able to bear you myself alone. And Moses is referring here to the time that they became so numerous that and judges were appointed to help alleviate the smaller matters that Moses could not tend to because of the numerous people at that time. Verse 10, the Lord your God hath multiplied you, and behold, ye are this day as the stars of heaven for multitude. And there was a large at this time, but not compared to today. And he makes room for that in this parenthetical verse 11. The Lord God of your fathers make you 1,000 times so many more as you are, and bless you as He hath promised you. Again, it's a promise. Do not take God's promises idly. Claim them. Many of them are made to you. See that you do claim them. Verse 12. How can I myself alone bear your cumbrance and your burden and your strife? And naturally, the pointing of the judges, Deborah, and all the others. 13. Take you wise men, and understanding and knowing among your tribes, and I will make them rulers over you. I'm going to make them judges. Verse 14. And you answered me. This is a recap of history now. Pay attention. And ye answered me and said, the thing which thou hast spoken is good for us to do. You agreed with me. That's what Moses is saying. 15. So I took the chief of your tribes, wise men, and knowing, and made them heads over you, captains over thousands, and captains over hundreds, and captains over 50s, and captains over 10s, and officers among your tribe. In other words, we had order, not a mob. We had a government set in place, and everything was done in an orderly way, as it should have been. Verse 16. And I charged your judges at that time, saying, hear the causes between your brethren, and judge righteously between every man and his brother and the stranger that is with him. A judge that does not judge rightly is no judge at all. A judge that does not judge righteously is one of the greatest sinners in the world. Verse 17. Ye shall not respect persons in judgment. That's one reason a person can become a bad judge. But ye shall hear the small as well as the great. Ye shall not be afraid of the face of man, for the judgment is God's. Now don't forget that. That's important. The judgment ultimately is God's. And the cause that is too hard for you, bring it into me, and I will hear it. Does that mean he was wiser? No, because God would make that judgment through him. This was a good system. Verse 18. And I commanded you at that time all the things which you should do. In other words, it was laid out for you. It was plain. It was simple. And I hope you can sense the simplicity in which Moses is bringing this forth so that everybody's up to speed. He's telling you exactly how things were decided, how that God himself is the one that spoke the words. Moses simply wrote them. Moses simply reported them. It was God's plan, and there's nothing complicated about it. Verse 19. And when we departed from Horeb, the desert, Sinai, that is to say, we went through all that great and terrible wilderness, which ye saw by the way of the mountain of the Amorites, as the Lord our God commanded us, and we came to Kadesh Barnea. This is to say, we came to the holy wandering in the wilderness. I think it was, had they not backed off from our father, it would have been a holy place. It was the entrance to the promised land. No way. What happened? He's about to tell us. Verse 20. And I said unto you, ye are come unto the mountain of the Amorites, which the Lord our God doth give unto us. Do you know what that means? That means God has promised it. He's already given it to us. Piece of cake. Walk in, take it. Now, don't you let this slip away from you. If God makes a promise to you in this word, then it's a piece of cake for you. Don't you back off from it. You have enough faith to believe that and know it, and God will keep his end of the bargain, always. The letter he has written you is full of promises. I don't know, have you read them? It won't do you any good unless you claim them. I mean, you're just whistling Dixie. You're off somewhere in your own boom boom land if you don't claim the promises to be successful. That's important. All right? Moses is making that very clear here. The Lord had already preformed, prearranged, had given it to us if we obeyed. All right, verse 21. Behold, the Lord thy God hath set the land before thee. Go up and possess it, as the Lord God of thy fathers hath said unto thee. Fear not, neither be discouraged. A piece of cake, let's take it. Do you think they did that? Well, you'll find out. Of course not. 22. And ye came near unto me, every one of you, and said, we will send men before us, and they shall search out the land, and bring us word again by what way we must go up, and into what cities we shall come. Now, that's a pretty good deal. A wise person, as the logistics of moving this many people doesn't hurt. But I fear that probably most of them, let's send a few brave men out there and see if they ever come back. Because, the word was whispered all around. There's giants in that land. Yeah, big ones. Verse 23. And the saying pleased me well. That's just good logistical planning, all right? And I took 12 men of you, one of a tribe. We did this fairly. 24. And they turned and went up into the mountain and came unto the valley of Eshcol and searched it out. Eshcol, it means a cluster of grapes, all right? Certainly the same vine of which Christ is and we're the branches. I want to tell you, geographically speaking, just as you enter that land, there is a huge, kind of a little ridge that it runs there, and it's called the giant's backbone. And it's jagged, and it looks at the ridge looks like vertebrae, so to speak. And I'm sure that I've always felt in my mind, this is only my opinion, that this is probably one of the things that spooked the old boys pretty good, because we know from later readings, as in Joshua, that God had already let some of our would-be future enemies had already killed the giants out. God promised they weren't there. They weren't. Just as with you, there are no giants in this world if God is with you. Verse 25. And they took of the fruit of the land in their hands. I mean, one bunch of grapes, about all a man could carry. And brought it down unto us, and brought us word again, and said, It is a good land, which the Lord our God doth give us. Verse 26, notwithstanding, ye would not go up, but rebelled against the commandment of the Lord your God. You had too many cowards, too many wimps in the group. Listen to rumors. Do you listen? This is probably one of the most important teachings in your life, to learn how don't listen to rumors and don't listen to wimps. Then who do you listen to? You listen to your Father from His Word. He wrote this letter to you. He made promises to you, and all you have to do is claim them and march. It's a piece of cake. Or you'll have rough times, but that's still a piece of cake for a man, woman, or a child of God. We like a little action. Piece of cake. Wimps get worried about trouble. People of God take care of trouble. Verse 27. And ye murmured, you rebelled. Weekend in the Hebrew tongue. You just rebelled at it in your tents. And said, because the Lord hated us, He hath brought us forth out of the land of Egypt to deliver us into the hand of the Amorites, to destroy us, to exterminate us is the word they really used in the Hebrew. Now, let me ask you something. Always look at facts. That sounds terrible. God hated them. Do you believe that? Could you preach a sermon on it? That's a big lie. I don't care if it is there in the Bible. That is absolutely not true. We know what happened. God led them to the sea, and God opened the sea for them. They passed through the sea, and then God drowned the enemy in the sea. And as they were in the desert, hungered, He fed them manna from heaven. He gave them a cloud of shelter from the hot sun in the daytime and a pillar of fire at night to lead them and give them light and protection from them and the enemies. And they say God hates us? You see, their faith was so lacking. He said it's the promised land. Showed them the size of the fruit. And they still doubt. I mean, look at Gath. Gath was the home of some of the giants. But Gath is grapes. Oh, I mean, you talk about fertile. But God had given His word. I give it to you. It's yours. And they have the nerve to say that God hates them. They have no basis whatsoever other than fear. And I like the fact they didn't even come out of their tent. Do you know that type of person? You call them out in the street and they won't even leave the tent. They rebelled. God has never exterminated any child that tried to serve Him in made any effort at all. So this is none other than the earmarking of Satan himself in the very camp. Somebody let him in. And, with cowards, a hero dies one time. I'll say a fighting man dies one time. Do you know how many deaths a coward dies? thousands. He dies every day, just a little bit, scared to death. Wimps, I'll tell you what. Verse 28. Whither shall we go up? Question. Our brethren have discouraged our heart, saying, the people is greater and taller than we. The cities are great and walled up to heaven. And moreover, we have seen the sons of the Anakims there. The Anakims means they're long-necked. You know, only 2 of the spies came back with a good report, Caleb being the main. And the others got off in the toolies all by themselves and began to talk each other into the dark, scary places. And they made it all up. Because there's documentation the giants weren't there. And that's why I think that the old giant's backbone, that ridge of mountains right there, that put the spooks to them. I will always think that in my mind until I learn different, and we'll have to wait till heaven to find that out. But I don't think I'm wrong. We'll see. There certainly weren't any giants out there to frighten them that they had to worry about. God had promised that was taken care of. It was. 29. Then I said unto you, dread not, neither be afraid of them. Come off of it. Get it together. Get your backbone up, man. 30. The Lord your God, which goeth before you, he shall fight for you according to all that he did for you in Egypt before your eyes. These people had actually lived and experienced the blessings of God when it looked like there was no hope. And here they turn into a bunch of wimps. Maybe sometimes you can give somebody too much good things and spoil them. 31. And in the wilderness, where thou hast seen how that the Lord thy God bare thee, fed him, as a man doth bear his son, in all the way that you went until you came into this place. God has led you, he's nursed you, pampered you. And I like that tenderness, like a man does his son, meaning we are his children, and he's taking care of us. 32. Yet in this thing ye did not believe the Lord your God. Beloved, you're coming into a time that you'd better believe him. I want to rephrase that. You better document to him that you believe him and that you love him. I said you better document it to him. How do you do that? You do it by talking to him and being a doer. Verse 33, who went in the way before you. I mean, God was out there in front of you to search you out a place to pitch your tents in the fire by night. He had a pillar of fire standing up there showing you exactly where to go, to show you by what way you should go, and in a cloud by day, getting the hot sun off your back. And now you're afraid you have to send out 12 men to find a way when he's guided you all the way. 34. And the Lord heard the voice of your words and was wroth, and he sware, saying, I mean, hey, God doesn't take much off of anybody, all right, except those that love him. And then he'll forgive and forgive and forgive. 35. Surely there shall not one of these men of this evil generation see that good land which I swear to give unto your fathers. I'm going to let them die in the desert. And he did. Every one of them. There's kind of a warning in that, my friend. When you come up to the place to enter the promised land, you can wait one day too long. It won't do you any good to repent at that time if you know better. It's kind of akin to the unforgivable sin. Think about it. Word to the wise is sufficient. 36. And he gives the exception. Save Caleb the son of Jephunneh. he shall see it. And to him will I give the land that he hath trodden upon, and to his children, because he hath wholly followed the Lord. Do you? Well, how do I know for sure? Well, you get familiar with his plan to know what's happening, what's taking place. You keep up with current events even. But most of all, you let him know that you love him. In person, not through someone else. You tell him. 37. Also, the Lord was angry with me for your sakes. Now, don't read over that. God was angry with Moses for the sakes of those children, saying, thou also shalt not go into the Moses, you're going to die too. They were picking on Moses because they were thirsty. And they came down on him so hard that when he was told to strike the rock once, he struck it twice. That's like crucifying the rock twice. That's like crucifying Christ twice. That doesn't cut it. That doesn't get it. And it would cost Moses the price of not being allowed to enter that Holy Land. It happened for their sakes, not his. So what does this say then? Preachers, be careful. So-called church leaders, be on guard. God expects a little more from you, and the sanctuary is where judging takes place. How are you fixed for blades, friend? Have you obeyed him? Do you teach his word, or do you teach what the traditions of men tell you to teach, or you might lose your pension? Let me ask you a question. If you know the truth, and I'm unfairly probably putting a guilt trip on some people, and I'm not going to apologize for it because I love you and I care about your soul. When you know the truth of God's word, and because of traditions in your church system, you're not allowed to teach truth, how long is your pension for? How old are you now, and how much longer is that pension going to last? I wonder if you would trade that for the retirement you have in heaven that's eternal. Because you could sure lose it. This documents it. So, hey, if your little pension is that important to you, you better hang on to it, friend. And enjoy it. Because you're going to be missed in some other places if you know better and don't. 38. Be like this one. But Joshua, the son of Nun, which standeth before thee, he shall go in thither, encourage him, build him up, for he shall cause Israel to inherit it. Now, what does Joshua mean? I mean, I'll say it a little bit stronger in the Hebrew, Yeshua. That's what, there are no J's in the Hebrew, so it's Yeshua. It's Jesus. As a matter of fact, Joshua is even translated Jesus in the New Testament in one place, and unless you know your languages, you'd be a little confused. So we have a type. And that is the only thing that can take you from this point today into the promised land, which is to say the millennium age. And so it is. And so is that the way it is? Is that the time it is? Have you all given me the open Bible sign? You have, haven't you? Well, I'm enjoying this. I think I'll just keep going. One more verse and then we'll stop, okay? I'm sorry for you in the audience. That's the sign I'm given whenever it's time to stop for today. I missed it. I must have been having fun. 39. Moreover, your little ones, which ye say should be a prey, and your children, which in that day had no knowledge between good and evil, they shall go in thither, and unto them will I give it, and they shall possess it. That's what God said. Listen, I'm going to tell you something. You're at a critical time. We're approaching Kadesh Barnea, holy wandering in the wilderness. Are you still wandering in the wilderness? Are you going to be able to make it over the Euphrates, that's to say out of confusion, or are you still in it? That's Babylon. Do you listen to Babel, or do you know the difference between it and truth? Think about it. Don't miss any of these lectures. They're very timely for the present state that we are in as we approach the year 2000. Don't let them see you sweat on your first cruise, friend. We got it made. Piece of cake. All right, bless your heart. You listen a moment, won't you please?